Okay, now we will go through the CJC 2012 prelim question. This is the time practice question that you did at the end of the first week of term 4. So take a quick look at it and remind yourself of the question. Okay, it is modified actually from a 25 mark question, and the reason for me to do that is I want you to focus on the content that is covered in this question. Okay, I don't want you to focus on the fact that it is 25 marks. So because of that, I split it up into two, and the key thing why I chose this question is that it very clearly gives you the standard way of how we should understand macroeconomic problems, okay, and that is the causes, effects and solutions kind of framework. So every time when you revise macro topics, especially the macroeconomic problems like inflation, unemployment and economic growth, you should always try to identify these three parts of the topic: the causes of the problems, the effects of the problems, and what are the solutions of the problems. Okay, so let's go on to talk about part A. Explain the impacts of a global economic slowdown and surges in world commodity prices on an economy. Okay, in your intro you should very briefly explain to me what is global economic slowdown, right? What kind of impact global economic slowdown have on the economy. Okay, it should be just a very brief explanation. Also, you should explain to me how surges in world commodity prices would impact the economy. Okay, and then in the intro you also run a quick overview of what kind of impacts you actually want to cover in this essay. After that, you move on to the body. So in the intro you only briefly explain, but in the body you will use the ADAS framework and explain in detail what are the impacts of global economic slowdown and surges in world commodity prices. Okay, so you have to put these two together and explain to me what are the combined impacts. Okay, lastly, in the conclusion, for part A question, like I said, you should just summarize your answer and also provide any insightful comments that you can make. Okay, insightful comments here, you can also make a link to part B. I'll show you how you can do it. So let's start. In the intro, like I said, just a brief explanation of global economic slowdown and surges in world commodity prices. So all you need to say is that when there is a global economic slowdown, it means that there will be a decrease in trade and a loss of business confidence. Okay, so these are the two main impacts, or the two main lead-ons from a global economic slowdown. Okay, and surges in world economic price tend to lead to an increase in cost of production. You see, I will be explaining these three things using the ADAS framework in greater detail in the body, but at least in the introduction I am just mentioning these topics and let the marker know that I will be discussing these points. Okay, finally I will present the possible impacts, and I'm presenting these impacts in the form of the macroeconomic goals. So what do I mean? I'll explain the impacts in terms of inflation, unemployment, and economic growth. Okay, so every time when we see there's something that asks for the impact on an economy, it is always good for you to present it using the framework of the macroeconomic goals. I hope by now you should already know what are the 4 macroeconomic goals, and they are low inflation, low unemployment, sustained economic growth, and favorable balance of payments. The last one, favorable balance of payments, you have not learned yet, so focus on the first three. Okay. So moving on, in the body, you explain in detail using the ADAS framework. So I said before that the global economic slowdown would lead to a decrease in trade. So how would a decrease in trade actually impact the ADAS framework? Okay. Most importantly, what will happen is that countries around the world will see a decrease in their GDP, okay, due to the economic slowdown, which means that the consumers there will have lesser income, and therefore they would want to import less. If they import less, it means that the exporting countries will see a decrease in their exports. Okay, linking to that, it means that X minus M will decrease. And as a result of X minus M decreasing, AD decreases. And here I will need you to explain. So the explanation that I'm looking for actually is very simple. You just need to say that X minus M is a component of AD. So if X minus M decreases, AD will decrease. Okay. So of course then you provide me with a diagram, and that just shows a leftward shift in AD. Okay. The next point is that global economic slowdown also leads to a decrease in business confidence. And you should know by now that business confidence is actually a factor that affects investment. Okay. So when people have less confidence in the economy, they will invest less, and therefore your investment will decrease. Okay, business confidence is also the same as business sentiments or economic sentiments. These terms are the same. They are used interchangeably. Okay, and not just that, consumers may also become more worried that they may lose their jobs during the economic slowdown. Therefore, we expect them to be more cautious in their spending, and therefore C also decrease. So given the fact that I and C are both components of AD, we would expect AD to decrease. Okay, so these two diagrams will be the same, so I just need to draw one diagram, right? There will be a leftward shift in my AD from AD0 to AD1. What kind of impacts do I see in the economy? Quite clearly, I will see a fall in GPL, or you can say a deflation. Then I also see a fall in real national income. So when there's a fall in real national income, I can say that there is an increase in unemployment and also slower economic growth. So can you see how I've presented the impacts on an economy based on the 4 macroeconomic goals? Of course, by the time A level comes, you should be able to talk about the balance of payments, but only promos, so we do 3 out of the 4. What I've done here is to just state the impacts, but in your actual essay, you should be explaining them. Okay? You should be explaining why is it that a fall in AD leads to a fall in inflation, why does it lead to an increase in unemployment, and why does it lead to slower economic growth. Okay, if you have problems with that, please message me and ask me. Okay, now the next one is surge in world commodity prices. So we should be familiar by now. Commodities refers to basic raw materials like iron, copper, even your agricultural products like cotton or soybeans. So these are inputs in the production of many goods. Okay, so because of that, when there is an increase in commodity prices, what we see is an increase in cost of production. Okay, and this leads to an increase in, this leads to a decrease in AS. Okay, diagrammatically, we will see an upward shift of the SRAS curve. Okay, So again, presenting the impacts in terms of macroeconomic goals, inflation now quite clearly you will see an upward shift of GPL from P0 to P1. So it means that there is higher inflation. Unemployment will still fall because your real national income has still fallen. And economic growth also slowed down because real national income has fallen. Okay, so the next thing is the combined effects. So I want to put them together. So clearly, in terms of inflation, the first scenario, which is global economic slowdown, actually led to a decrease in inflation. But the surge in world commodity price actually results in an increase in inflation. So ultimately, what happens to the inflation rate would depend on the relative magnitude of the shift in AD and AS. Okay, but what is clear is that you will see a increase in unemployment and a slower economic growth, because both the scenarios, both a global economic slowdown and surges in world commodity prices lead to lower real national income. Okay, so when there is lower real national income, there is higher unemployment and slower economic growth. If I combine the two scenarios, I should get this diagram. In this case, I have drawn it such that the shift in AD is greater in magnitude than the rise in AS, which means I would see a fall in inflation. But you could well draw it another way. Okay. So finally, in the conclusion, I would expect you to summarize, and that is what we've just discussed. The two scenarios, a global economic slowdown and surges in world commodity prices, will lead to increase in unemployment and slowdown of economic growth. But its impact on inflation depends on the relative intensity of AD and AS. Okay, so the insightful comment here you might want to, as a skill, is that you want to link to the next part of your essay question, in this case your part B question, right? So what we want to say is that these scenarios actually give rise to a very challenging economic environment for the governments, and therefore they will need to devise policies to revive economic growth in their countries. Okay, so this comment here effectively links you to the next question, which is to discuss appropriate policies that a government can adopt to stimulate its economy. Okay,